All right, so thank you to everybody for coming and welcome to the Arts Advisory Committee meeting. Um, so the first item on the agenda, the presentation that we had originally scheduled for the Culture Days presentation, we have to postpone that a little bit. Amanda's not able to give that today. So Dawn, I guess you have another presentation for us. Do you want to, if you don't mind, can you go, are you ready to go ahead with that or?
Thank you. Yes, Brandy's going to help me by moving the slides for me so that you don't have to see my 19 things I keep up on my screen or me try and figure out which screen I'm working on. So Brandy kindly offered to run the presentation. So Brandy, do you mind loading her up?
Just let me know if you guys can see that okay.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Right, we'll give it another go. I'll hit share again.
There we go.
You're good there?
Yeah, it's in the notes mode, so if you can full screen it.
There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you, Brandy. That's really helpful. If you could move to the next slide, Brandy. What I thought I would do today, Rob is away this week, and Stephanie and Rob and the Recreation and Culture Facilities team, as well as the Corporate Facilities team, have provided some updates. And I thought I would touch on each of the following topics: the Performing Arts Center, the Georgian Theater, 5 Points Theater, and a dance pilot that we're working on. So Brandy, if you could go to the next slide, please, for me. So the first one will be on the Performing Arts Center update. So Brandy, next slide. All right, so one of the first parts of Council's direction was related to staff engaging the services of a professional firm with expertise in municipal theater development, design and management to review the recommendations of the task force and report back to General Committee with a memorandum. And there were 3 specific things that were identified for the firm or the consultant to make recommendations related to, and that's project timelines, the resource requests, and the project design scope. So next, please. So the steps in the process are, first of all, issuing a request for proposal. So the preparation of a scope of work in conjunction with our procurement staff, given the value of this particular consulting engagement, we are required to issue a request for proposal, and we do that in conjunction with our procurement or our purchasing staff to issue that document to the market. We're anticipating having that issued in late spring, early summer, and hoping to be early on that. The RFP would be available to the market or to potential bidders for a minimum of 1 month for proponents to allow them to review it, ask any questions of clarification that they might have, and then submit their proposals. And then once the consultant proposals are received, they'll be evaluated and award made during the summer. And then the consultant will begin their review. The first part of the review is a review of the historical documents, as well as, most importantly, the task force report, the working group summary related to the Performing Arts Center needs, as well as any other background documents that we have over the history of this item. So those will all be provided to the consultant. The task force members, the Barrie Arts Alliance, and other stakeholders will be engaged in the process, and the consultant would have that opportunity to reach out to those members and seek their guidance and feedback. And we're anticipating that to occur in the fall. Next. And then a draft report would be developed by the consultant and presented to the Arts Advisory Committee. We're anticipating that to occur by December 2022. And then the report is finalized after the Arts Advisory Committee feedback and presented to the new council in early 2023. So those are the steps in the timelines. And next, I will speak to some of the scope information that is being drafted so far related to the RFP. So the scope of the work for the RFP, it's still under development, but it will generally contain user and space requirement validation to determine optimal seating and performance spaces for a community of our size today, as well as a community into the future, our future population of approximately 250,000, including the optimal configuration, space relationship requirements, equipment needs, and standards. So it's key for this to identify our longer term needs, not just our needs today, and also an analysis of the impact of the space requirements on the proposed management structure and operating model, including utilization and pricing constructs. Next. The scope of work will also include an operational financial impact assessment and to determine the operationally related cost and revenue implications of the proposed venue. Brandy, can you go a couple more slides? There we one more. There we go. Stakeholder engagement plan, identification of key spaces to inform the fundraising program and other pre-opening considerations, conceptual design options, there may be more than one, and costing estimates for those designs. And then the concept design final report of recommendations for an optimal performing arts center. So those are all part of the draft scope for the RFP. And I'm going to move along and maybe we can take any questions at the end. So the next item is the Georgian Theater. And there were some questions posed about the current status. So I thought I would provide some updates related to those. All of the necessary health and safety inspections have been completed. All immediate requirements passed the inspections, but the inspections did identify some non-immediate items that needed to be actioned or will be actioned by the end of 2022. The college provided us with a temporary use permit to allow the first performances to proceed as planned. As the new lease agreement with the college is still being finalized, they were offline for a little bit as they were preparing in terms of a potential strike contingency, which has impacted the finalization of the lease. The city has sent its comments regarding the most recent version. That's been with the college for a couple of weeks, and they're reviewing that. Georgian College has informed the city that all of the audience members must abide by the Georgian College proof of vaccination and masking protocols until the end of this week. And that's the end of their winter semester. That's where the timeline aligns to. So we'll find out if they have anything further as it relates to that. But at this point, they've indicated those remain in effect this week. Next. In terms of some maintenance and repairs that were completed, there was overall maintenance and repair of all the lights, the audio equipment, the communications or the clear comms equipment, and video equipment. I have a little asterisk there because there are some minor replacements that are still required and will be completed by the end of September or as needed as it relates to the video equipment. There was cleaning and maintenance of all the back of house spaces, and Georgian College has advised that it has completed the asbestos abatement of the ceiling tiles. So that was good news for us. Next. There are some repairs, as I noted previously, that were identified as non-immediate from those inspections. They're to commence after the new lease agreement with the college has been finalized and executed by all parties. One is the curtain upgrades, both the traveler and typical curtains. What's Your Point rigging is the vendor that was on site to finalize their quote. They've indicated a delivery timeline for the curtains is a couple months. The traveler could take up to a year. They've advised us. What's Your Point rigging was also the vendor on site to provide their finalization of their quote for the fall arrest system and the updates to that. They've indicated it's 1 month for the update and install for that system. In terms of the emergency exit doors and the roll-up doors, because of the value of that, our procurement requires a minimum of 3 quotes, and it's anticipated that those doors will take approximately 4 months once the agreement has been executed. Next. Just some additional items. There's no additional immediate items were discovered requiring repair or replacement when those inspections occurred. Staff had previously identified a number of capital upgrades or investments that would be required for longer term usage of the facility, but nothing beyond that was identified. Staff are researching additional lighting boards and moving lights to update Georgian, and ones that would be transportable to other venues in the future, such as the Performing Arts Center. So that's something that's underway right now. Next. Next, I thought I would give a brief update on the 5 Points Theater and some work there. We have installed some live streaming and filming equipment. Our recreation and culture facilities team has been amazing. There's 2 cameras and a switchboard have been installed. This will allow for live streaming directly from the 5 Points Theater to any social media platform. It's also able to record shows for producers to edit and share on their own schedule. So rather than just live streaming, you'll have the option to edit and share at a later date. We're currently testing that with various social media platforms right now to ensure that everything is working correctly. And once that testing is completed, we'll have some additional information available on that system. Next. And lastly, I thought I would provide an update on a dance pilot that's that we've got underway. Next. So this is a pilot project that was initiated last fall, utilizing the Eastview Arena to host dance competitions and recitals as a short-term solution to our space constraints. So staff worked with the dance community to create a space to address their needs for performance space. As I mentioned, it's a short-term solution. Or the city's existing inventory of staging and draping is being reused to offset costs, or the need for the dance community to rent equipment. The stage will begin in May, and we have 6 different dance groups over 10 days, with more requests coming in as we speak. So those are the updates, and I think the next slide's questions. Yes. Are there any questions?
I do, but I just want to say, like, this is a really fantastic update. I have not seen something this thorough yet, and I'm really delighted by just how, all encompassing it is. I feel much more confident about where everything is, and that's a really, really positive thing. Yeah, a couple questions though. So on the Georgian Theater, obviously those inspections were done. Do you know when they were completed?
I'll see. The Rec and Culture Facilities team gave me the update, so let me see if I have the actual dates. I don't know that their email did, but let me just no, I'm sorry, I don't have the details on when they were done, but I can certainly get back to you with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. And then the other thing is, you mentioned that we need to have a quote on the rolling door at the back, I guess. Do you know how long that process, like, I know it said 4 months for installation, but including the quote, what does that timeline look like?
So what we would be doing is, once the lease agreement is executed, then we would contact 3 firms. We don't believe it would take very long. They'll have to come in and do an inspection of the existing doors. There is, as I understand it, and I'm certainly no construction expert, some brickwork that will need to be adjusted. So it's not merely just the doors themselves, and there's some framing prior to associated with the brickwork from a construction perspective. So the facilities team has people lined up, and we're just waiting for that finalized agreement. And then typically to obtain 3 quotes, it takes us a couple of weeks. And then we're about 4 months from based on current construction schedules and where we see contractors at right now for that to be completed.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. Yeah. And then other questions. So the report said that, or the presentation mentioned that there's research going into additional lighting boards for the Georgian as well. I think that's fantastic. Something else that has been brought up though at Barrie Arts Alliance meetings, and I think in perhaps some of these earlier consultations regarding repairs on the Georgian, would be also to look into soundboards and sound system related things as well that could also be brought over to other venues and stuff like that, because of course primarily the Georgian is used for music, and I think the sound or like music's a big part of using that space, and I think looking into that as well might be a benefit if that work is being done anyway.
Thanks. I'll take that back to the team. Lauren Andrews has Andrew has been amazing, and I'm sure that she'll appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, no problem. And then my last question here is, so obviously I think the Eastview Arena stage is great. I think that's a really fantastic solution for now. I guess the one venue that I haven't heard about is the Sadlin Arena stage. I was wondering if there was any update on that, or if there's any interest in moving forward with that project as well.
So the Sadlin stage is, we've arranged for the draping that goes across the middle of the, and some stage. It's the stage is available. It's an expandable option, and it has been used. I believe Blue Rodeo utilized it, and parts of the other day they were very pleased with the draping that we have now at center stage. I saw it the other day, and they've indicated that's helpful to them. I'm not sure if the Arkells are using it this week or not, but it sounds like it's been something that the concert venue people have liked the location and the flexibility that it provides. So again, it's another solution. It's not a perfect solution, but it's another solution to provide some space to ensure that anything that can be modified in the interim is available for our performing arts community.
I love
These
that.
are not,
Thank you for No, I totally respect that. I guess on that note, has there been any interest from the local, like have there been any bookings by local groups for the Sadlins?
There was a considerable interest from the dance community. They were the ones who were initially our discussion. Rock 95 used it for their birthday bash, and we were hesitant to market it too much until we got some initial feedback on the setup. So now that we have that available, we'll spread the word a little bit more. But we want to make sure that people recognize that what is the work at Sadlin is there as an interim solution and to augment what we have available. It's not intended to replace anything. It's not a performing arts center by any stretch of the imagination. We recognize that. We're just trying to provide options at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you. Much appreciated.
Chair, Ms. Loughy does have her hand up for a question.
I was wondering, were you able to access any government funds and funding opportunities through all these renovations that you've done to the various places?
Not at this point. We have submitted various applications, but we have not been successful.
Because I know Midland Cultural Center got quite a large grant there for the work that they were doing. And the other thing, and it's, this is all new to me, so I don't want to, I'm not aware of all the performing things, but I'm wondering, so you do the performing arts, the center, there's a focus on that, and that, I guess, includes a review of every opportunity for performance in the city, does it?
It will be focused more on the art center itself and the task force report. Stephanie can speak more to the scope, but we've heard loud and clear that the other venues don't provide the type of environment that's required for performing arts. But Steph, if there's something that you wanted to add to that comment.
I don't know whether you understood totally, like, will we have a long-term, because, Georgian College was at one point, it was on the edge of being closed down. There was discussions, it came back on the table. Now you're providing a lease, which of course requires city money going to that for a period of time. I don't know what is the length of your lease on the Georgian College Theater?
So at this point in time, that's certainly something that we have identified for a couple years with potential extensions, so that it would allow for timing of construction if there was something that related to a grant. The college has been very, very accepting, certainly more open than we've had in the past to discussions of that. They had identified a long-term desire to convert that space, but they've indicated that it's not in their immediate future. So they were willing to look at least a couple years with that potential for extension, understanding that that there would be a need until a new performing arts venue was constructed.
Okay, I just was interested in the whole overview. It appears that you've done some of the research on that, and that sounds great. Okay, thanks very much. That sounds great. Thank you very much.
My apologies for misunderstanding your question initially.
Yeah.
Chair, Mr. Herman has a question.
Yeah.
Just a couple things. On the Georgian Theater, either in the previous meeting and the one before that, the issue with the emergency doors, I think there was had to be some provision that if the emergency doors weren't available or changed, that there's actually going to have to be staff members there during any shows. Is that going to still have to happen?
That is my understanding. We're trying to work through that with the college, but my understanding is the college is requiring staffing until those emergency doors can be replaced.
Gotcha. Okay. And kind of going off of Janet's question is the promotion for the Georgian Theater. So it was taken off the docket as a theater. There were a couple shows that were canceled because there wasn't a theater. It's a Kind of Magic was a Queen show. Whose Live Is It Anyway? I had tickets for both. They may not know that the Georgian Theater is now open and available. So is there a thought to contact those folks again and say, by the way, Georgian Theater is open and you could have a show? Because both of those shows are still have a listing of concerts, and so they may come back if they know Georgian's open.
Thank you. Yes, we are reaching out to various groups. So Music in Motion with Disney's Newsies is there this week. Pigs, Canada's Pink Floyd Come Back to Life tour is there on the 30th. We've got a couple of graduations and some dance recitals all happening. So we're reaching out to, Lauren has been an amazing asset for us and is reaching out to clients about the theater and getting bookings back online. So we're excited for that to happen.
Thank you very much. And I presume that Georgian will give you something April 23rd to say this is our new mask and vaccination protocols.
Well, we hope it's before then, since there's a performance on the 23rd.
All right.
Be nice to be able to let people know either they're continuing or they're being removed. At the time that Rob had conversations with the college, they were anticipating that they would be removing them, but given health numbers right now and transmissibility, I don't know that they're likely to. They seem to mostly be focused on aligning their entire building structure together for the school semester. So that may mean that all of their protocols are relieved, and I hope that we find out before the 22nd.
That's good. And I agree with Ian, is the presentation you made, I think is really what we've been kind of looking for as a committee. Lots of great information, very detailed. So you're hired, you can come back every single month. Thanks very much.
I'm grateful that it was helpful. I think that, you know, these are some really exciting projects for the team, and certainly Rob and Paul and Andrew and Kevin and Paul and Lauren have been working hard on this on these projects, each of the different facilities, and are being pretty creative in terms of what we can do to optimize what we have in the interim.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Okay, were there any other questions on that, or are we all set? So it looks like we're all set to move on. And again, just wanted to echo that. So thank you very much for that presentation. It was really helpful. Kind of touched on all the key points. So it was great. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So just in following along with the agenda, the next item is actually a Performing Arts Center update. And I think that we've already pretty much covered that, so we don't really have to worry about that. Arts Advisory Committee action items. As absent in the last meeting, I don't have a list of the action items or the progress on those. So I don't know who wants to kind of take the lead in touching off that discussion.
Sure. So there were there's some back and forth about some of the ways that we can get the word out about, about ourselves as an organization, and potentially as well putting together a presentation for council in September. And Scott actually offered to help with that. So maybe I'll pass it over to him for any updates if there are any. Oh, you're muted, Scott.
You're on mute.
My wife wants me to be muted, but that's a different story. There's a link to a document. So, well, I'll bring you up to speed. So really, we do want to show Barrie and the community what we're all about, what we're doing. We also want to use the forum such as Marshall's newsletter to get out information about us. Also, so we can give information about what we're doing, and also receive information from the greater arts community or whoever wants to be involved to take items to us on a monthly basis and just give information. So on the document that Ian set up, is I actually did a draft proposal of what potentially we could give to Marshall. So I don't know if everybody's had the opportunity to take a look at that. The first document is really just a summary saying, here's who we are, here's who's involved, these are the kind of things that we're doing. And then there would be a link to hopefully the notes that we do for this meeting. And it would be very helpful if we could get a link to the presentation that Dawn's made. So, I mean, in the Marshall's newsletter it's lengthy. And so if I just do a couple paragraphs saying this is what we are, and here's the links to take a look at what we've done, and here's some updates, which would include the presentation, that would be great.
I believe another part of that point was the creation of a separate email for us. But I believe Wendy Cook emailed us, I believe, about the fact that committees don't have their own emails, that it has to go through, I guess, her or someone like that first. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. So, yeah.
Janet, I see your hand up.
Just a quick question. So we corrected the McLaren Arts Center. I sent back a note. It wasn't, the name wasn't quite right in that. I think having those links is good, particularly to the performing arts. I think part of our job should be creating awareness for the Performing Arts Center. So I think this is a perfect link to do that with, because unless people know about it, they can't give to it or participate or ask questions. So I think that's excellent to have that link to Dawn's presentation is really, really good. I think it's a great first start.
Absolutely. Can I just ask a question to clarify the email? Now, obviously, we can't have our own, but who does it specifically go to then? Should it go to Wendy? Do we have somebody like one of our committee representatives that would normally kind of go through those emails? Or
You were absent, so we said you.
oh, okay, all right, that's fine too. So
the thought was maybe that it should go to you as the chair, but I'm not sure of further updates.
Anything that
believe
does come
Ms.
into the
McAlpin-
city clerk's website does get distributed to the committee. So it's my understanding from previous experience with other committees that it will come into us.
okay, so essentially everybody will actually on the committee will see the general communications that's going on, so there'll be a lot of transparency, and then I would be responsible generally for replying or responding or reacting to the particular comments or situation to make sure. So that makes good sense. I just want to make sure everybody kind of, and me included, knew the actual process so that we get that correct. But that makes perfect sense. So we'll have to change my email address for that because my other ones are really crowded with spam lately, and I'm missing a lot. So, but we'll get that taken care of, and that's not a problem for me. I'll get that changed today.
I think I see
as well.
Dawn's hand up though.
Okay, Dawn, go ahead. Sorry.
My apologies. I forgot to mention it while I was doing the presentation, that one of the things that we discussed internally was creating a web page for the Performing Arts Center where we could provide status updates to the community on what, and that would also help promote the Performing Arts Center. So Janet had raised a very important point related to that. That certainly will help with fundraising activities if people know what the status is. So once we're a little bit further along with the scope and have the consultant, it'll be important to have the consultant's timelines locked in. Then we can provide a web page where people can see what the status is. And I just thought I would let everyone know since I missed that during the presentation.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. And that would be very helpful. So a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions on that. So that's great. Janet, looks like you have another question as well.
Just one more quick question. I think I've got one more quick question around that. Has there been consideration, Dawn, about developing a early brand for the performing arts? So it isn't just a page, it's actually an engaging page for people, because I think that brand can really drive people. I know communications has limits, but a look and a feel, given the information that's already been collected, could probably an early presentation as a performing arts center, if it becomes a regular page like our public art page on the Barrie website, by our meaning the Public Art Committee, it's pretty uninteresting. You go directed to it. Yes, the information's there and it's good, but perhaps there should be some consideration about actually making it something with a bit of artistic flair, so that it indicates it is a performing arts center. It's about the arts. It's not just a reiteration of information there. Although it is somewhat costly, can be early. If you can entice people early on and start a recognition program, whether it be a logo through the Performing Arts Center, I think that you'll engage more people. It'll create more interest, and it allows you something simple to propagate. So I think it should really be considered before, at some stage very early with the Performing Arts Center, so people realize it's something new, it's something exciting, and it's something forward thinking and a virtual or social media presence.
That's a great suggestion, and we often do have a graphics designer on staff, and we often have pages that have a specific brand associated with them, and we can certainly approach that. I think one of the things that we'll want this committee's feedback is timing for that brand, and whether or not you want to tie that into a design or to build that into the brand, or if that's something that, we have an initial look to the page. I can tell you that we are in the process of redoing the city's website. So there will be a more attractive look and feel no matter what, but the committee would be valuable in terms of providing insight into whether or not, if there's an opportunity to tie a design concept into that brand, would it be better to wait for that to give people something to rally around and to re-emphasize that design? That's something that would be valuable to us, I think.
Just a quick one. I do believe that, within the city, I'm sure you have great designers, but the brand concept will make your, what we call the big funnel, bigger. The sooner that brand concept is out there, yes, it costs money. I think it would be expertise that would, take all your stakeholder information and position it somehow. And I don't know how you position it, but you have to position it a certain way. And I think the sooner you do that, the better. And then there's somewhere where people can check in. And then I think your web presence and a social media presence I don't think it'll tire it out. It has to be strategic in terms of not too much ahead of time. But I think coming out with a look or appearance, then people will start to recognize it as you do the bigger promotion.
So, Janet, if I understand you correctly, you're thinking more of branding for the actual campaign. So the comment about having branding and logos and such ready for launch and what you're proposing aren't necessarily two different things, because you could do the branding, make sure that there's an artistic and creative flair to the actual building and development of the project, and then launch the formal branding for the actual center in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years as we build it and are ready to launch. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, like you start right from the beginning doing the big work of what the brand concept would be. I mean, what they would do is read your stakeholder information. I don't know how broad based that was. And then you'd pitch it to 3 groups. They'd come back to you with a brand strategy, and it's a long-term brand strategy. It's
Right.
like the building blocks. So you wouldn't have one thing at one point, then you'd go to something else. The whole thing would be like seamless, but it would be strategic in terms of layout, information, rolling out each thing and bringing excitement to it, like starting with a brand strategy. It would just be positioning, positioning it, wording and phrases and images that will depict what's going to be there. Then as you get closer, you could have, I think the RVH did this. I'm not sure they did it very well because I don't really like their logo, but there could be a city involvement in the actual logo, but you have to have the positioning first and have information about the positioning and make sure it resonates with stakeholders. And then there could be, what's our logo going to be? And that's maybe 2 to 3 years before the even Performing Arts Center comes up, but it's like the slow burn.
Right. And each step on that can almost be treated like a new, like you said, once the logo is coming out, it's almost like a new thing to promote every step along the way, but it's still all consistent and flows evenly. So
yeah, like I think you need a long-term brand strategy about launch and everything else. And I think it has to happen early. People tend to put it in late, but you've got all this opportunity. And let's put it this way: COVID has left a lot of money in people's jeans, and given that they start to know about the Performing Arts Center, they should be starting to get interest in it. I mean, they'll spend this money in the next couple of years as fast as they can, but at the same time, people may just have made more money. The market's been good, and I think the sooner there's a nice strategy that's how can I say, professional and like sort of to the slow build. And I think it's really important. It's something people don't invest in. And then all of a sudden they turn around and say, well, what's our brand? What do we look like? Well, you should have known that at day one. How are we positioning this? I'm doing this with something right now, and we've worked for almost 8 months on positioning. We finally figured out what the position is, and then, you know, we'll work from there. But I think it's important. I think because then what you want is as many people as possible having an interest in this, and the positioning to collect the donors you want.
Councillor, go ahead.
Thanks, Greg. I think that's a terrific idea, Janet. And it's interesting that you say that, you know, you've taken 8 months on this other project. We probably should be starting up now, and then by the time the design, the consultant is ready to give us something, you know, this design or this branding would sort of evolve with the building as it proceeds. So I guess we probably need to think about how do we operationalize your suggestion? Do we need a separate committee? Is this a staff function? Is it, yeah, how do we get it done? Because I do think that you're absolutely right. We need to create some momentum that will carry us along for the building design, but also for fundraising, because that's a big piece of it. So if you have any suggestions about how we actually do this, I'd be interested.
Well, you know, money always is number one. If you have money, you can make anything happen. There are grants out, and I'm sure the city's already applying for the Tourist Relief Fund. I don't know whether anybody is, but you can still apply to them, and you could, because we are a tourist, it is a tourist place, right? I do believe we qualify. You'd have to find out who the city's already applying there, but that is a perfect opportunity. There are some other grants. I'll go look them up because I'm looking them up for this other, and they've been suggested through various bureaucrats. But the Tourist Relief Fund, I mean, you might be a fit for this, because what they're looking to do is enhance existing tourist places, and this would be enhancement. And but you'd have to read it through, and you'd have to talk to it's run through FedNor, and then they just assign you a rep close by. But the city may already be doing this, but sometimes it's nice to have the money for it. But it is a separate group. It's not within the city. It'd have to be managed by the city, but not within the city. But I don't think it's a difficult thing, because I think I haven't read the verbiage, we've, you know, on the report, but you obviously have it, the stakeholder interest, and also the position. And with all your information, you should be able to hire 3 different branding marketing firms. And I could find some, you know, I've got a bunch of people that do that I know well, and not to get them, but perhaps people they know that would do a good job. And then you just figure out what it's going to cost you, and then you figure out how you pay for it.
Okay, so I just have a question to the people from the city of Barrie regarding that. So how would we, as a committee, kind of facilitate the creation of that? Obviously, a lot of that has to be driven and approved by the city, because it is ultimately a city of Barrie project. So how do we, as a group, kind of facilitate that, make that happen, work with the city to move that forward if we want to do that?
I hate to make the city more work, but basically I think tourism, and I think it's Steph's area. I'm not sure who, I still can't figure out all the city stuff, but I think it has to go back to staff. It has to go back to the tourism people, because it's desperately linked to tourism, right? In any way. The Performing Arts Center, correct? Even though it's for our area, we're hoping to attract people outside, I assume. And the other part is just going back in the feasibility and who does what, and then that would have to come back to the committee next month. You know, we've done research. This is who would manage it. This is how it could look. We've done other projects like this. This is how we've managed them. What do you think? So that would, I make that an agenda item for next year, next meeting.
Absolutely, for sure. Okay. Councillor?
Actually, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'd be interested to know from either Dawn or Stephanie what they think of that approach. One of my thoughts was, do we need a motion from this committee that would eventually end up in front of council? I mean, that's one way to create a little bit of knowledge and promote the idea to start with. But do we need direction, from council at some point?
Stephanie or Dawn Brady. Dawn, you have your hand up. See?
Yes, thank you. I think as a first step, Stephanie and myself will need to take this back with and have a discussion with Tourism Barrie related to this matter. We'll also need to review the budget that we have currently approved and whether there are sufficient funds to address the scope of work that we have for the facility and the items that I laid out, as well as a branding strategy in case we don't get a grant. Typically, most grants that we receive are not 100% funded, so we may need some additional funding. So if you wouldn't mind putting it on as an agenda item for your next meeting, we can certainly do some of that research and then come back to the committee.
All right. Yeah,
Something
that
else
would
I'm
be
just-
fabulous.
Something else I'm just thinking about is that I believe the Performing Arts Center Task Force had a fundraising subcommittee.
Yes.
So it may be, so like, regardless of what happens with on like the city and staff side, I would certainly want to make sure that those people were brought into that conversation, because that was what they were tasked with.
That's correct. That is a very important part of things. And I think Stephanie wanted to add something to that.
Yep, that's the hand. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes, no, thank you. And in terms of the work of the task force related to fundraising, that work in principle, they made sure that they preserved some of the bricks from the demolition. But there was a whole feasibility study done on the fundraising element as part of that initial report back in November 2020. And basically, in order to pull a fundraising plan together, you need to have a set of assets that you can fundraise for. And what ended up happening is with the change in scope and recommendations coming out of the task force for the additional spaces, the seating, without a concept, you can't define all of those spaces for the fundraising element. So where that sat with the fundraising group is the need to sort of take that step back based on the recommendation of the task force to do the work to get the concept, which then will define the spaces for the fundraising. In terms of similarly branding, again, from Dawn's lens, and I'm aligned with that piece, but that's sort of where that sat. The task force is currently, their work is completed, but certainly as part of a discussion, I think they're still very much interested. From the survey that went out to the public, they were able to indicate their interest, and we know that we had some specifically that were interested in those portions. So I think as part of the entire program, we'd want to do that engagement, and we do have some commitment to keep some of those updates going.
That's
All right.
basically what the fundraising people are telling you, is what I was saying. Yeah. Good.
Okay, awesome. That's a great discussion. I think that's probably until we have a bit more information, a bit more framework. But if we can put it on the agenda for next time, that would be fabulous. It's really important. And Janet, thank you for raising that. That's a big thing. So, any other questions or comments on that particular item at the moment? Or okay, was there anything else we wanted to raise then regarding the Arts Advisory Committee action item? That's kind of where that came. You're still in that conversation. That's where that arose from. So, all right. Then, if not, then we shall. Again, the next
Scott,
item.
sorry, Scott has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Scott.
That's okay. I just kind of want to go back to the getting something for Marshall's newsletter. So I'd like to get going on this and have something for him in the next couple of weeks. So I wonder if this committee could review the document that Ian's done up as a link, and if everyone reviews that, and then if we could put the link in, whoever needs to from the city, of the notes from this meeting and even a link to the presentation, if we can do that maybe by next week. So if we can do it maybe April 26th, and we can get everybody agreed to this is the verbiage that we think is okay, then I can contact Marshall and say, this is what we want to do. And he potentially could put it in on the next Wednesday, so April 27th or the 1st of May, which would kind of get the ball rolling on at least communication and get some links to everybody going towards getting the information. And also it would give a little more meat to us, as in if more people want information about this or that or the other thing, or want us to take a look at other things. So if that's okay, I'll set April 26th for you to review the document, and then and put in all the links, and then potentially April 27th or the following week, as I could contact him to put that document in for us on our behalf.
Sure, absolutely. That sounds like a good plan.
I have a quick question here. Just, do we have to put that through comms? Because we are a committee of the city. We are putting some verbiage out. I'm wondering whether communications needs to look at it before we put it in somewhere. Stephanie, you'll know that answer.
It's our experience with public art, Janet. I see it's rubbed off. We can do a quick run through our comms folks and give them a heads up in that lens. Totally happy to run that through. And I think we can turn that around fairly quickly.
Is that a couple of days kind of turnaround, or like just for future reference too, when we do that? Like, is it how long does that something like that generally take?
I don't think it. I honestly, generally, I think for something as and I say this kindly, is, you know, fairly simple, straightforward message. Generally, I think it's a same day, if not 24 hours. You know, again, sometimes things come up and other things take priority, but in principle, in a standard business, I think within a 24-hour period is reasonable.
Janet?
I think that's great. I just want to make sure that they're online with everything we're doing, because, you know, you don't want them flagged with something. It keeps us in the group and keeps us our intercity relationship, so they can reach out to us if they have something they can help us with. I just think it's all good.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? We have to have a close relationship with the city, and there's no sense in doing something kind of that interferes with that. So definitely, that's a great point. I appreciate it a lot. Any other comments on that? Any other questions for Scott? Or
yeah, just so in the process of that, we as a committee will review it, and then once that review, then off to Stephanie, and then she can have the city review it, and then that's the final review. Does that sound like a good plan? Or should the city review it first?
I think we send all the information that I think we put together what we want to say, and then we'll send it off to the city to edit it or approve it or make suggestions. I think it's probably the most efficient way to do that. It's gonna be simpler, less back and forth. So if we get that already, if everybody reviews it on time, and then you can kind of put that together, Scott, then you get it to Stephanie, she'll get it out to comms, and Stephanie doesn't even have to get back to us. If it's approved, she can just go right out, and if we have to make any adjustments, just let us know.
So follow the link that Ian's put up, and then make your changes, and then we'll again, let's try for next week, April 26th to have the final, and then we can go from there.
All right, does that work for everybody? Okay, great. Under the action items, was there anything else we needed to address this meeting, or?
Just one is, I noticed on the City of Barrie website is our mandate was approved a little bit ago, but it's not on the website yet. I wondered how long it took to do that.
Along with the question that was asked earlier, I will definitely get that information out to you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's nothing else on that then. Georgian Theater update, of course, next on the agenda, but that's already been covered as well. So we won't waste any additional time on that. Arts Awards update. Who wants to address that first? Stephanie?
In Amanda's absence, I will do my very best to give a bit of an update. We are in process based on the feedback we received from the committee at last round. So we are looking at keeping it in the timelines where we've previously held it into the fall. So we're looking at venues and looking at a release date. We are and this is a bit of a diversion from the Arts Awards, but some of the same things will the same categories, I think, based on the feedback, will be fairly much in a similar execution as we have been before. The only other thing we're looking at doing is how we release the nominations and the timing for that. And we're exploring whether that would tie nicely to doing a bit of a connection. And I know we've talked about connecting with or engaging with the arts community. We did a Zoom call a couple of months ago, and I think we're all kind of hungry and ready for some in-person. So depending on how numbers and gathering applies, it might be nice to tie it into sort of an arts group gathering, which again may provide a nice platform for the advisory to provide a little bit of information to the group as well. We can launch the Arts Awards and potentially look at culture days. And again, I also think it's always a great opportunity to talk about venues and the Performing Arts Center. So in the background, it's a little bit early days. I suspect we'll have a little bit more to put into the discussion bucket in May. Happy to have any feedback from the group, but that's sort of what we're looking at doing. And again, Amanda's just nailing down a few of those dates, so we'll have more detail to provide at the next meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions on that subject? All right, so if we're all good on that, then we will eagerly await some more information next month. But it's an exciting project. I'm glad to hear it again. Communications regarding Marshall Green's newsletter. Again, the next one we pretty much covered, I think, everything that we need to speak to on that. So we should be all right. So really that kind of goes through everything on the agenda, but I just wanted to kind of open it up for just a moment or two. We're at kind of our hour that we wanted to keep the meeting at, but I just wanted to know if anybody else has any additional comments, suggestions, ideas, or anything we overlooked at the meeting that we need to talk about, or anything that you want to see addressed next time on the agenda.
Yeah, I guess just in the last month, there was the Arts Investment Fund, process, I guess, and announcements and stuff. I just love to hear how that went, how the new program went for the jury, and just
Okay, so that's probably something we should ask Amanda to probably give an update on. Would be my guess on that, but we can definitely ask her to give us an update on that for the next meeting, if that makes sense. Unless anybody else,
unless Stephanie has anything to say about it.
Yeah, that was my next question. Unless anybody else has something we want to say now. So, Stephanie, do you want to address that at all, or?
I guess the more important question is, when do I not have something to say about it? No, I'm grateful for the question, Ian. I think in principle, it was received fairly well by the adjudicators. I think that in terms of some of the process refinements that were put in place, I think they generally felt quite good about it. And the process from an applicant perspective, I think some early feedback is that we weren't asking for the pages and pages. Most felt that the tighter questions were nice. Some felt they ran out of a little bit of room. So I think there's still a little bit more nuancing to do. I think the plan at this point, now that we really wanted to have all the notifications out by the end of March. We've hit that target, so we're very happy about that. But that doesn't mean that the work goes away. And I think the next element is really now looking at that feedback to say, from participant perspective, what was the process like? And are there still some areas where we can tweak a little bit? We will be going to the adjudicators to get a little bit of feedback on that piece and looking at it. I think we were very grateful this year to receive some additional funding from council, significant $80,000, and that really helped us be able to, or help the adjudicators. I don't decide where the funding goes. That is a completely adjudicator-driven process, but really allowed them to drive that across many. We did see an increase in applications across some of the across some areas, which I think was great. And again, one of the things that the Culture Grant the Arts Investment Fund program was looking to do is ensuring that there was reaching all of the audience from increased accessibility and inclusivity. community. So I think there are some good wins this year. I certainly think when you look at the returns again, that the organizations report back how they're able to lever the funds to support additional funding through other levels, that we're seeing that investment. And I'm really interested to see how we get back to show this year and where some of those results come. So that's sort of a high level. Again, Amanda will have far more detail than I will, but that's sort of the cursory viewpoint from my lens on where things went.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, Amanda's gonna have a busy meeting next time, but I guess that's what happens when you miss one. So that's all right.
I guess,
do you
yeah,
have
I
any
just
other
wanted to
questions
say,
on-
like, on behalf, as an applicant, one thing I really appreciated was how in the memorandum to council, it explicitly said what the total ask of all the organizations was. I think that's really important for council to be aware of, that even with that 80,000 increase, we're still not matching community need, and hopefully that information can be leveraged in the future.
Yeah, that was one of the things that crossed my mind, is now how do we make that $80,000 a permanent addition, or if we should ask for 100 next year. So that's but you're absolutely right, to see that information is really, really important. So that was great. Any other questions on that?
I'm not the regulator on this one. So yes, certainly we go through a budgeting process that starts in June, but asks associated, the advisory committee does have the ability to make recommendations in that regard. And maybe I'll just leave that there and say that for our next chat.
All right, awesome.
I'm looking at Dawn in trepidation saying, did I say it the right way?
You said that.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me.
I think she might have been talking to me with my finance hat on at that point in time. And Steph's feeling optimistic if she thinks she's starting her budget in June. It's May. So.
All right. Anything else on that? Any other comments, questions, additions, or are we all set? All right, looks like we're all set for now. It was a good, very efficient meeting. Actually covered a lot of grounds. Great presentation again. We appreciate that a lot. A lot of great information shared. Scott, thanks for taking the lead on the communications thing. Again, greatly appreciated from all of us on that. And Janet, some great additions too. So thank you all very much for coming today. And if there's no other questions, we're all set to adjourn.
Great.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. Great meeting.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for coming. Have a great
Have a great
day.
day, everybody.
All right.